Hello everyone, I hope you are doing well. It's time for the monthly Q&A. So, apologies in advance to all whose names I will butcher throughout this video. As usual, we will discuss many interesting topics, but first, let's get high on tea. This week's tea is Gou Gu Nao Cha, a great tea but with a very strange name. Gou means dog, Gu Nao means head. Put together, Gou Gu Nao Cha means dog head tea. Please keep in mind that this tea has nothing to do with the dogs. Actually, this tea originated in Gou Gu Nao Shan in Dian, Jiangxi province, home to many types of great teas, with Gou Gu Nao Cha being one of the most famous. The mountain Gou Gu Nao Shan is named so because its shape resembles a dog's head, and Gou Gu Nao Cha is named after this mountain. Thus, a great tea with a very strange name. Because of this reason, this tea is not that famous despite its being one of the best green teas. For a while, marketers called this tea Yu Shan Cha or Jade Mountain Tea, a beautiful name that could have potentially carried a better marketing message for this tea. But local tea farmers didn't realize the power of strong marketing communication. A nice name would provide and still kept calling it dog head tea. In China, there are many popular methods to name tea. Let me now introduce some of them. Normally, for famous teas, the naming format is the geographic name followed by the tea species and the processing method. For example, consider Xihu Longjing or the West Lake Dragon Well Tea. Xihu or the West Lake is the geographic name, and Longjing or Dragon Well is the tea species and the processing method. Another method is the geographic name followed by the shape of the tea. For example, Junshan Yanzhen or Jun Mountain Silver Needle Tea. Junshan or Jun Mountain is the geographic name, and the Yanzhen or Silver Needle is the shape of the tea. So, the tea in a silver needle shape produced in Jun Mountain is called Junshan Yanzhen. There are many other naming methods which I will introduce in the future. Let's talk further about Gou Gu Nao tea. It is the green tea that was invented in the Qing dynasty. So, this tea has about 200 years of history. Since the altitude of Gou Gu Nao mountain is about 900 meters, it is a kind of cloudy and misty area. So, tea bushes that grow in this environment are rich in tea amino acids. Also, Gou Gu Nao tea is rich in vitamins and minerals. Selenium and zinc content in its leaves are a lot higher than many other green teas. This is why this tea is very delicious. To produce this tea, tea leaves should be picked in the spring season. High quality Gou Gu Nao Cha uses tea leaves with one bud and one leaf. In addition to the red season, the weather conditions are also critical to the unique flavor of Gou Gu Nao Cha. For example, tea leaves will not be picked on raining days or if there's dew on the leaves in order to ensure the great quality of the tea leaves, which is the strict traditional rule used to produce this great green tea. It is worth noting production of this tea involves the shaqing process twice. Shaqing is a term used in tea production. Sha means to kill, qing means green. Shaqing method involves frying the tea leaves at a high temperature to stop the enzyme activity of tea leaves, to stop further oxidation of the leaves so that tea manufacturers can keep working on other processing procedures until the tea is ready. Normally, green tea only use one shaqing process, whereas Gou Gu Nao Cha uses shaqing twice in order to generate its great flavor. By the way, from now on, I will regularly introduce more tea processing methods, which is a very interesting topic for any advanced tea lover. People consume Gou Gu Nao Cha mostly for its great flavor, especially its freshness due to its richness in tea amino acids. Also, Gou Gu Nao Cha leaves are picked in the spring, so no pesticides are needed, which is why this tea is a good choice for those who are concerned with pesticides in tea. This is the Gou Gu Nao Cha. You can see the leaves is very small and tender, with a lot of white hairs on the tea leaves. This is the tea decoction, a light yellow color, very fresh and delicious. Gou Gu Nao Cha is best brewed with water at 85 degrees Celsius for 15 seconds. 3 grams of tea requires 150 milliliters of water. Alternatively, you can add hot water on the same temperature and quantity into a cup that already has tea leaves for 10 seconds. Since it is green tea, you can normally brew it about 3 times. These days, Gou Gu Nao Cha is still very affordable. I hope you will enjoy this tea. Do let me know your experiences with this tea in the comments. With that, let's get on with our Q&A. Questions answered in today's video include: First, Evgeny Sukovanov, Xiang Shu. Next, Humeseraph, Tai Chi and Grappling. Next, Simone Cavazzoli, stepping exercise. Next, from Ofer JRL, Jin versus Qi. Next, from Darkwing Dook, identifying Kung Fu versus Wushu. Next, Darkwing Dook, military versus civilian practice. Next, Darkwing Dook, alternatives to Nui Danfa. Next, Darkwing Dook, middle Dantian in Xiu Dao. Next, Darkwing Dook, middle Dantian in martial arts. Next, Darkwing Dook, Buddhism versus Confucianism. Next, IC Pearl, wooden dummy versus weapons training. Finally, Dragon Phoenix, big deeper on sword. So, let's get started. Evgeny Sukovanov asked a question about Xu Dian's Xiang Shu. He asked, I quote, I was very impressed with the Xiang Shu moves you demonstrated. I have a question. Why are these movements so different from Xu Dian's original Xingyiquan? Is this transformation obligatory for all Xingyiquan directions, or is it a rare case of a style rethinking? End quote. Thank you for such a good question. First off, I recommend checking out my video titled Xue Dian, a Legend, his Xingyiquan and Xiang Shu. Link is in the description. In that video, I introduced Xue Dian and his practice and contribution, especially Xiang Shu, a style and practice created by him. Xue Dian, a legend in Xingyi history, was extremely popular in the Tianjin Xingyi community decades ago. Even after he passed away, the influence and the popularity of his practice continued to be impactful. His practice covers Xingyi, Xiang Xiu Dao, and many others. Unfortunately, his passing away was directly related to political reasons, and with time, his teaching was only practiced by a very small number of practitioners. I was the first person in China to share Xue Dian's practice in public about 15 years ago. In order to avoid any unnecessary conflicts and misunderstandings, I attribute Xiang Shu as a part of Xingyi, since it is not that easy to create a new style in the Chinese martial art community, and I have no plan and no energy to do so. So, I said many years ago and even today that Xiang Shu is an extension of Xingyiquan, not aimed to replace Xingyiquan at all. That solution may be correct in terms of intentionally avoiding unnecessary issues caused by being accused of creating a new style. But technically speaking, it is very hard to make a direct correlation between any traditional Xingyi and Xiang Shu, since it needs a much deeper level of analytical work. So, I'm very happy to see that someone like you pointed this issue out. However, if we analyze the unique practical aspects of Xiang Shu, we can notice the benefits of Shenfa or body method training. I have said many times in the last 20 years that the disadvantage of Xingyi practice is that this style does not make it easy for its practitioners to reach an advanced level in body method or Shenfa. However, Xiang Shu's practice can help improve this issue and make Shenfa practice much more accessible. So, I believe that Xiang Shu can be an advanced content of Xingyi practice, especially helping to improve body method and flexible martial power, which is essential for Xingyi Fajin practice. Since Xiang Shu is a very rare style and practice in China, it is not that easy to promote it in a productive way. For example, many people in China have been looking for Xiang Shu teaching. However, after I published some materials about it, especially some videos of this style, some people copied and then twisted the practice and claimed it to be their Xiang Shu. In order to protect this style's authenticity, so far I have been only teaching my students in person instead of posting a lot of materials online. I hope one day I will have enough energy to share it with more people while avoiding that style being compromised and diluted by unethical teachers. Sometimes, not teaching in public is actually a way to protect it. It is a sad situation, but there are many martial scams exist. I hope I have answered your question. Humeseraph. Humeseraph asks, quote, Tai Chi has been criticized as being a grappling style when it comes to self-defense application. Is there any truth to this? Thank you, Humeseraph. This is a very good question. Short answer, it depends. Let me explain. Most Tai Chi styles, including Chen style, contain grappling techniques that can be found everywhere in the routine. Most Tai Chi movements done in an open hand posture can indeed be used for grappling. Given that there are plenty of open hand postures in all Tai Chi styles, no wonder many people perceive Tai Chi to be a grappling style. However, we have to know that most open hand postures can also serve as strikes. For example, open hand postures can also be changed to a fist and be applied as a punch or a strike in most situations. Therefore, Tai Chi open hand posture can be perceived as a way to practice the power releasing technique of Fa Jin, which can be altered into a punch if the hand shape is changed from a palm to a fist. In the case of Chen style Tai Chi, the second routine is especially worth noting for a majority of movements that used a closed fist instead of an open palm. So, Tai Chi practice, especially Chen style second routine, actually focuses a lot on punching techniques. Again, and more importantly, Tai Chi practice is mainly for developing Tai Chi energy or Tai Chi power, which can be applied in palm strikes or grappling techniques, as well as in closed fist for punching purposes. Thank you for your good question. Let's move on to the next one. Simone Cavazzoli asks, quote, any stepping exercise that you would recommend to practice and cultivate those 4 principles? The Xingyi 5 elements could always be enough to start, end quote. Good question, thank you, Simone. Assuming you are referring to Xingyi practice, stepping patterns in the 5 elements are sufficient to start off with to cultivate those 4 principles. Xingyi's 5 elements fist apply 5 different stepping patterns, representing 5 power generation training methods in order to help practice Fa Jin. Or if a Xingyi practitioner can have a powerful Fa Jin, it is mainly because of the correct practice of stepping and vice versa. There are specific requirements of a 5-element stepping practice, but basically, stepping is for helping the body generate the Xingyi power. So, as long as you can release the power in Xingyi, I recommend you continue working on it. And eventually, you will figure out the physical relationship between the stepping patterns and Fa Jin practice. It requires specific training, which is beyond the scope of this video. However, the basic principle has been mentioned and the rest relies on your practice. Thank you once again for this good question, Simone. I hope it can help you improve your practice. Let's move on to the next question. Ofer JRL asks, quote, what is the difference between Jin as Fa Jin and Qi? It seems that Qi and Yi are fundamental to generate and express Jin, but are they necessary? Could someone Fa Jin without developing or coordinating or practicing Qi? It seems that Jin and Qi have many similarities. They both can be transmitted outside the body. They can be sort of filled, Peng, Jin. They can move in the body as a wave or a pulse, where a Qigong doctor emits Qi to a patient. Thus, he or she emit Jin, end quote. Thank you, Ofer JRL. This is a very good question since it touches on the fundamental relationship between Jin and Qi. In many prior videos, I have talked about the concept of Qi. Qi is the Chinese philosophical concept that can be used in explaining almost everything in Chinese culture, especially in ancient times. Due to the lack of modern scientific knowledge and research, ancient Chinese used the term qi to describe and explain the closest term may be energy, since ancient Chinese believed that anything in the universe consists of energy. Even more interesting, they believed energy itself consisted of energy. However, in martial art practice, qi has a more specific meaning in that it is a kind of energy that can be used not only in physical movements for self-defense, but also to describe and explain energetic experiences resulting from different practices, including physical movements, mind, and so on. So, qi is a common term that can be used almost everywhere in Chinese daily life, which I introduced a long time ago. So, jin can be considered a type of qi, or a function of qi. In other words, jin is based on qi, and qi can be converted to and expressed by jin. Without jin, qi in martial arts will be useless in terms of its martial function. Without qi, jin will not exist either. So, they are closely related to each other. Also, qi and yi, or mind, are closely related since yi, or mind, is used to guide the specific function of qi. Without yi, qi cannot be applied effectively in martial art. Qigong healers using qi to treat their patients is a deep topic which I will introduce in a future video. I hope I have answered your questions. Ofer JRL. Let's look at the next one. Darkwing Dook asks a few questions. I'd like to answer them one by one. His first question is called how to avoid getting scammed by this traditional versus wushu problem. For example, from a beginner's perspective, traditional Tai Chi and wushu Tai Chi look the same. Wushu Tai Chi may even look more challenging so that it looks more worthwhile to practice. Furthermore, the teachers or instructors may not even know whether what they teach is the traditional or wushu version. End quote. This is a very sensitive question to answer. This is why I'm creating so many videos in order to provide general but very deep knowledge about traditional and authentic practices. It really takes time to help a beginner understand this topic. I think the best way is through exposure to knowledge and correct information. More importantly, it requires education. Without education, there's no way to help anyone understand the existence of this issue. No wonder it is sometimes just impossible to prevent this problem from occurring. Again, education is the key, which is also the motivation behind my sharing so much information with the community. One good solution for a beginner to improve their skill to distinguish the traditional practice and the contemporary wushu practice is to watch traditional practices such as old generation practitioners' Tai Chi demonstrations. With time, people will develop an eye for traditional practice. Of course, there are many new forms of martial scams. Like I mentioned in last week's video, that many contemporary wushu athletes who know that they cannot perform wushu very well, especially the very challenging movements, rebrand themselves as quote-unquote traditional practitioners instead of continuing their wushu training. This is the real issue that has been becoming more and more serious in the last decades. So my recommended solution once again is to watch more and practice more, and eventually beginners will gain the knowledge and the skill. I think that is the best method so far. His second question, quote, since you mentioned military origin, martial art practice for military difference from those for civilians. For example, Xingyi, Baji, even Tai Chi were taught to and practiced by both military and civilian. I think a soldier wearing their armor, equipment, and weapon would move differently compared to a commoner wearing casual clothes. But there doesn't seem to be Xingyi or Baji or Tai Chi forms that are specialized for the military. End quote. This is the misunderstanding in the community. Let me clarify it first. Yes, I did say that Chinese martial art practice, especially bare hand practice, is derived from military weapon training. However, styles such as Xingyi and Baji were not used on battlefield directly in ancient times. Xingyi was used in the anti-Japan war in China since many military soldiers practiced the Xingyi saber as part of their military training. But it was only when the situation demanded, since soldiers in World War II already used machine guns on the battlefield, unless it was necessary to use a saber to fight. Yes, of course, Xingyi, Baji, and some other styles were used by caravan merchant bodyguards or armed escorts in battle with bandits. But it was different from the military battlefield. The military battlefield heavily relied on weapons and military training in ancient times. Martial art training used in the ancient military was not the same as the modern martial art training, since modern martial art training focuses on individual practice and skill development, while ancient Chinese military training focused on training in groups and collaboration in fighting with the enemy, which required a different skill set. I plan to introduce ancient military training method in the future. So, soldiers who wore armor and equipment used different training systems compared to individual civilian martial artists. He also asked 3 Shoudao-related questions, which I will answer one by one. First question, quote, are there Shoudao methods that are specialized for women but don't reduce the breast and menstruation? In case some practitioners still want to keep their shape, try pregnancy, etc. End quote. Of course, there are many methods of 女丹法 or female elixir practice, and a female practitioner does not have to practice the part that can have an impact on breast and menstruation. What I introduced in my female Shoudao practice video is the most popular method, but there are many other methods too. His second question is about women cultivating middle Dantian instead of lower Dantian. He asks, quote, what happens if men try doing that? Will it work as well as when women do it, or are there side effects? I heard in one Qigong practice, focusing on middle Dantian is dangerous and can cause heart problems. End quote. Of course, men can focus on middle Dantian as well, even though it is not a very popular method. Based on many people's experiments, practitioners have been able to quickly experience energetic benefits. However, beginning with the middle Dantian is not recommended according to the traditional method, since men should start by focusing on the lower Dantian, which is an area for refining Jing. As for side effects, many issues can happen, including bad feelings in the heart area. But it is different from heart problems in medical terms. It is more of an unexpected energetic experience or energy deviation, not physical damage as people speculate. So, I do not recommend male practitioners begin with the focus on the middle Dantian. But if someone does so, the most likely issue would be slow progress in Xiudao practice. Serious health issues are not as common with this approach. In conclusion, it's best to just follow the traditional method. Here's the third question, quote. For martial arts, people usually focus on lower Dantian, but what is the role of the middle Dantian for martial art practice? For example, can that be used to replace lower Dantian or generate movements and so on? End quote. Good question. Well, I recommend watching my video titled Dantian, the source of internal strength is planned. In that video, I have introduced the Dantian concept in detail, especially in the context of martial art training. To answer your specific question, we do not focus on the middle Dantian. Also, the middle Dantian cannot replace the lower Dantian since they have different functions in martial art training. Again, do check out that video and I'm sure you will find a better answer by yourself. Darkwing Dook asked a question about Buddhism and Confucianism after watching the video that I posted 2 weeks ago about the separation of religious Taoism and philosophical Taoism. Then he asked, quote, I wonder if same separation also exists in Buddhism and Confucianism. I remember hearing a similar distinction for Buddhism from someone who studied in Japan. End quote. This is a great culture-related question, and I'd like to share my understanding with you. In China, Buddhism is practiced as a religion. However, there is another branch of Buddhism practice, or some people believe it is to be a part of religious Buddhism, called 佛学, or the study of Buddhism, a non-religious form of Buddhism practice. Again, many people still insist that 佛学, or the academic study of Buddhism, is still religious. Confucianism, on the other hand, is not a religion at all, since, first of all, we treat Confucius as a scholar, philosopher, and teacher. Secondly, Confucianism does not fit the criteria of a typical religion, since a typical religion needs to have a god, but Confucius is not one. However, I have noticed that in the West, some scholars perceive Confucianism as a religion, which is a bit surprising. But at the same time, people are free to believe whatever they choose to. Darkwing Dook, you asked many good questions, and I hope I have answered them all. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my knowledge with the community. Let's look at the next one. I see Pearl ask about wooden dummies versus weapon training such as spear, sword, in terms of improving power development. This is an excellent question. However, I have to tell you that I have never practiced with wooden dummies all my life. I have only observed other people practice with it before. However, I have a lot of experience practicing different martial art weapons and other methods that may have similar effects. Let me explain. First of all, I believe a wooden dummy, especially the one used in Wing Chun, is great. I also believe that training with wooden dummies may be one of the most important factors in making Wing Chun a practical style. Again, It is based on my observation and analysis without any direct experience. However, I really do not recommend internal style practitioners use a wooden dummy to practice self-defense skills. The reason is very simple. Different styles apply different types of martial power training. Each internal style has its own pattern of movement, which is the source of power. So, the wooden dummy is good for some style like Wing Chun, due to their specific pattern of movement, but not the internal styles. So, if you practice both Wing Chun and internal styles, then using the wooden dummy to apply Wing Chun skills is a great solution, but I recommend not mixing it with the internal style practice. Now, let's talk about weapon training such as spears used in internal styles. It is a great method since it can strengthen the whole body's power. To do so, you have to practice the spear correctly. Holding a big and heavy spear for the wrong movement is useless in developing internal power, since toting a weapon merely for the sake of it and without the correct training method only reveals the lack of traditional weapon training knowledge. So, choosing the right training method is the key factor here. When I was a child, we practiced martial art with training partners most of the time. I think having a great training partner is much more effective and efficient than using any equipment. This is my recommendation based on personal training and teaching experience. I hope I have answered your question. Let's move on to the final question for today. Dragon Phoenix asked about the Big Dipper constellation on most straight sword in terms of its significance in Taoism. Thank you, Dragon Phoenix. It is an interesting question related to Taoist culture. Yes, we often see the 7 stars or Big Dipper asterism on sword or other weapons. In Chinese culture, especially Taoism, 7 stars represent 7 gods in religious Taoism. They are believed to possess divine powers. So, this symbol can be found in many places in religious Taoism. Such symbols are called shenfu or hierogram. In religious Taoism, symbols are believed to serve divine functions such as dispelling evil away and bestowing protective power upon its believers. Especially in the Ming Dynasty, since Ming emperors promoted Taoism more than many other dynasties, combined with the development of weapon production technology, the Big Dipper asterism on swords became very popular. In the beginning, that symbol was only used in religious Taoist equipment, including sword used in religious rituals. With time, that symbol became a customary decorative pattern on martial weapons, among others. So, the significance has changed with time. Nowadays, swords with that symbol do not possess any religious significance anymore. It's just like the yin-yang logo, which was originally used by Taoism and Confucianism, but now martial art schools that teach Shaolin Kung Fu use that symbol as well. Dragon Phoenix, I hope I have answered your question. Those were all the questions for today. Thank you all for posting your questions, and I hope you found my answers informative. As always, please don't hesitate to ask follow-up questions or new questions altogether. Thank you for watching. See you next time, and enjoy your practice.